dreamed of him beating me, but I always stayed afraid of him. But the closer I get to the ring, I'm more confident. Once I'm in the ring, I'm a god. No one could beat me.
Punching harder. How do we do it? Really doesn't take that much time online to find out that the internet's pretty oversaturated when it comes to content revolving around combat sports and specifically boxing and going about punching more effectively. A lot of people have the false impression that punching hard, producing a lot of force is something reserved for elite guys like Mike Tyson or Don Fry or just big ass dudes who can lift heavy weights. But it's really not a mystery, and it's not exclusive to certain people. You don't just have to be born with it. I think people often view certain skills in sports as just being completely innate and not really being able to be trained. Whether it be speed in football or shooting in basketball, people sometimes just look at skills and think, you either got it or you don't. There's really nothing you can do. But all sports-specific skills are just that, sports-specific, and they need to be a part of our training if we want to improve at them.
So, if we want to be improving at something like punching more effectively, we need to make sure we're working on that specific skill, both inside of the weight room and within our own training. So when we're lifting weights with the intention of improving our ability to punch. And the same thing goes for sport practice. When we're in our training, we're training to improve our ability to punch.
Now you might be thinking, what about a guy like Francis Ngannou? There's no amount of training that's going to be able to make me hit as hard as that dude can. And yeah, I don't know. I think you're actually probably right about that. But don't let that dissuade you, because there are still things we can do. But let me break down a few things first. See, punching someone really hard basically comes down to two things. How much force can you produce, and how quickly can you produce that force? Taking you back to kindergarten science class, we know that force equals mass times acceleration. So if you have a lot of mass and you're moving it fast, you're producing a lot of force. And again, just like Francis Ngannou, this isn't really a shock. Everybody knows that big dudes can hit hard. But that's not the only part. We also need to think about how quickly we're producing that force. And that is power, which is what we really care about. And don't worry about the work part. That's just force times distance. And power is basically how quickly are you moving that force. So hitting somebody hard is way more than just producing a ton of force. Think about it like this. Would you rather be hit by a semi-truck going 5 miles per hour or a Fiat 500 going 100 miles per hour? Now, I don't know about you, but I think my answer here is pretty clear. So clearly we know that how fast we can produce force matters, especially because a lot of combat sports are dictated by weight class. And because force relies upon how much mass you have, if you're in a certain weight class, you can't gain a ton of mass, then we need to make sure we're as lean as we can possibly be with a good body composition and producing that force with that gained muscle mass as fast as possible.
So now you're thinking, okay, I need to get bigger, faster, and stronger all at the same time. Let's do it. But it's a little more complicated than that. You see, muscular size, strength, and power capacity are all three different qualities. And while they do build upon each other, they can't really be built effectively at the same time. And don't get me wrong, you still can improve these things for the most part at the same time, but it won't be as effective as it possibly could be if you're building a ton of volume to increase muscular size or pushing maximal weights to get as strong as possible. The power output is not going to be as high as it otherwise could be. And if your end goal is to be the most prepared for a fight you can be, or to throw the hardest punch, well, you need to make sure you're the most powerful you possibly could be. So you need to be prioritizing power. So now you might be saying, well, how long does each one need to be worked, and in what order, and for how long of a time frame? And don't worry, I can answer all these questions. Once you have a good general understanding of how to piece these things together and in what order, it really doesn't become all that complicated.
Now, luckily for you, I've cooked up some stuff in Excel, so let's go ahead and take a look at it, shall we? And just an FYI, this work will be split up into 3 separate blocks, all spanning 4 weeks, so a total of 12 weeks that are meant to be conducted at really any point in the year based around fight, training camp, you name it. It's really very general, so it could be used by anybody that has an interest in fighting sport. Keep in mind this is going to require access to a weight room, so if you're not really into or down to lift weights, you're kind of gonna have to suck it up and just do it. But I am assuming that most people who are into fighting and combat sports are also down to lift weights, but I could be wrong. So phase 1, this is a very general phase. As I said, we want to make sure we have the best body composition possible. In order to do that, we need to make sure we have as much lean mass as possible. And that of course means this will be primarily focused on hypertrophy. And before you say, oh, well, this is only just upper body, this is just a sample of what the general progression would look like and what exercise selection would look like. So let's take a look at what an actual specific day would look like. So Sunday week 1 would look a little something like this. We got the clean pulls, setting up the cleans that we're going to be doing in the later cycles, doing some incline work to develop the hypertrophy of the upper body, hack squats, just a little leg movement I would prefer over back squatting for hypertrophy phase, and then pull-ups just to keep it well-rounded for a full body workout. We're doing those as many times as possible just to get as much volume in as we can. Also keep note that because it is a hypertrophy block, the volume will be increasing throughout this block, but that will change for the 2 next. So phase 2, this is where we're translating that newfound size into strength. So here we're increasing intensity across the 4 weeks. You can see the exercise selection had varied a little bit. So let's take a look at what an individual day would look like during this cycle. So now we're finally translating those clean pulls into full cleans, doing compound movements like the bench and the squat, and now those pull-ups are becoming weighted. We're really trying to push the strength for all these movements, but still saying full body. And last but not least, the power phase, and this is a phase that's meant to be closest to whatever competition or peaking phase you might be interested in. And this is the one that's going to look the most different. Because we're getting more sport specific during this phase, our training is flipped. Instead of doing lifting 3 times a week and regular in-gym training 2 times a week, we're flipping that. That way we're getting more sport specific volume. And beyond that, you can see that the training in the gym, not just the weight room, but the gym itself for sport specific training, is now geared more towards power. Rather, before it was more generalized. Now that we're closer, we're peaking for a specific purpose, we're emphasizing power. So just like the ones before, let's take a look at what a specific day would look like during this phase. So our cleans now become power cleans. We're doing more landmine pressing, still doing the squats, but now we're doing box squats, and the pull-ups are all based on speed. Now before you say, well, why is everything so light? The reps are low, why are the percentages so low? That's so we can put an emphasis on the speed that we're moving at. When the weights are lighter and we're really driving based off intent and speed, we're working a completely different type of adaptation than we otherwise would with the heavier weights.
So you can see overall that each phase has a very specific intent driving towards the end goal of having a more powerful punch. And for those of you not familiar with periodization, I can make another video on it, but I recommend you do some research into it on your own, because this is the most effective way to see progress in your intended sport, especially for something like combat sports where fights are few and far between. Even if you're an amateur or looking to become an amateur fighter, fights are still only going to be at most 4 times a year. So planning ahead of time is going to be critical. Now, this is just a pretty basic look at what an S&C program should look for something like a combat sport, especially like boxing. But if you're looking for something a little more in depth, I'd be super down to talk about this more in the future. Any specific topic, any area that you want to see expand upon, just let me know. But as for now, that's going to do it for me. Let me know what you guys want to see more of in the future. Like and subscribe. I'm really interested in making these videos. I'd love to really keep expanding on these topics. I'd love to give out full programs. If people are wanting me to do that, I'd really like to go in depth with specific programming details. But yeah, just let me know what you want to see. Like if you like, leave a comment, let me know. Take care, have a great day.